So with that, I would like to hand it over to Kriya, who's going to tell us a little bit more about Energy Trust.
All right. Thank you, Ellen. I'll just share my screen very briefly and try to go through these uh, quick slides just to share with you a little bit about Energy Trust and our wonderful partnership and relationship with AIA Oregon. We are happy to be part of this digital design series. Just very quickly, Energy Trust is an independent, not-for-profit organization. It's dedicated to helping utility customers both invest in and benefit from energy efficiency and clean renewable power. These are the different utilities that are part of that, including General Electric, Pacific Power, Northwest Natural, Cascade Natural Gas in Oregon, Southwest Washington, and Avista. Very simple. Our vision is this a vision of many of your firms and definitely a number of these partnering organizations, and that's clean, affordable energy for everyone. So to do that, we have a host of things, including grants that we offer. I did want to let you know because many people are online that are doing some research in net zero building design, many architects today, that the Net Zero Fellowship grant application period is open right now. So please, I'll put in the chat later that application link. Check it out if you would like to be our next Net Zero Fellow. We invite you to fill out an application. We have a whole lot of online trainings, so if you miss one of our in-person trainings, there's something there for you. A lot about new technology and understanding embodied carbon and removing barriers to net zero commercial development. So all things I think this audience might be of interest. Lastly, I just want to share some we have online trainings, live webinars like the series we are doing today, but we also are going to be in person with our current Net Zero Fellow, Jeff Stern. He's going to be in Bend on April 1st and in Phoenix in Southern Oregon on April 2nd. So if you are any in those areas in Central or Southern Oregon, we invite you to come in person and be with us. Those also have CEUs attached to it. Lastly, commercial training and events and education. My name's Kriya Caping. As Ellen said, I'm always happy to answer questions about our series or how you might be interested in connecting with us and learning more. So lastly, why we're here today is Midland Library and learning a little bit about its features, some of the ways that engaged with Energy Trust for incentives, and mostly the estimated energy savings that are associated. So let me hand this over to our presenters today to let you know a little bit more about that.
Thank you, Kriya. And would you mind scrolling back just a couple slides?
Sure.
Because I didn't hear you mention the fact that Jeff Stern's wonderful presentation will also be virtual for folks who are not in the Bend or Phoenix areas.
Thank you, Ellen. Yeah, absolutely. We're going to try to catch you anywhere you are at. So in person, and if you are not in those areas, we have a virtual presentation that everyone's invited to. That's going to be on April 10th by GoToWebinar. And if you're interested in that, you can always put your email or let me know. Hopefully, we will make sure that you have a registration link and can attend that soon. Thanks, Ellen. I appreciate, highlighting that there's a way to engage.
Yep. Okay, thank you. So I I had the privilege of working with our presenter today, Kate, on the Midland Library project. And we did talk about it in January. And we took kind of the DEI lens perspective that Kate will touch on a little bit as well. But today we're going to dig into a little bit more of the other features as well as hear about the library bond in general. But I did want to share some of the cool stuff that we were able to help out with Energy Trust incentives. So kind of around the features, it did go through our whole building offering, which means that they did an energy model and we were able to help them with technical assistance for that. That energy model highlighted the efficient lighting, the variable refrigerant flow system for the mechanical as well as ERVs. And so we were able to incentivize those features. We also connected early and we were able to help with early design assistance and the design review commissioning. So really great kind of incentives from all the way through the process. We were able to provide around 45,000 in cash incentives, but I always just get so excited when I see the fact that we estimate they're going to be saving around 13,000 annually on their just day-to-day or month-to-month utility bills, and around 85,000 in kilowatt hour savings. So that's just compounding year after year savings that's going to help the overall bottom line. So with that, I would like to um, introduce Kate Vance, our presenter today, and she is the Library Bond Project Manager and Deputy Director at Multnomah County. And so she's going to pull up her presentation here in a minute and walk us through some really interesting information about the library bond in general, as well as a little more about Midland. So thank you so much. Kate.
All right, can you guys hear me? Okay, great. Good evening. Thank you for inviting me to share a little bit about Multnomah County Library Capital Bond Program and continuing the discussion on Midland Library. My name is Kate Vance. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Deputy Director for the bond program. And it's really nice to see a lot of familiar names and faces who are here with us today. So in 2016 and 2017, the library undertook an effort to really develop a framework for the library's future library space needs. If you want to dig into this really massive document, it's on the library webpage, and there's a link to it on the very last slide. And all of these slides will be on the AIA Oregon website with all the links in the near future. And some key building goals that were identified through that framework process and set the stage really for the library's pursuit of a bond measure. And those goals are outlined here and I really address that low square footage per capita compared to neighboring and comparative library systems, a recognition of the growing population east of I-205, implementing technology for efficiency and cost effectiveness, and the evolving needs of the library services. And the Multnomah County Libraries hadn't had a significant update since before Google was a thing. So one of the metrics that we always like to point to in articulating our needs is that although Multnomah County is the 4th busiest system per capita in the nation, all of our locations could fit inside the downtown Seattle Library. So in 2020, voters passed a bond to upgrade the library system. We started with a new operations center that encompasses materials handling, distribution, outreach services. We expanded or renovated or in the process of doing so 7 branch locations, and we're building a new major location in East County right across from City Hall in Gresham. That'll be on par with Central Library downtown. We're also touching all of the remaining locations for technology upgrades, safety, and finishes. Little fluff and buffs, we call them our refresh locations. And here's our overall project map. The dark blue circles represent the projects that are completed and are operational, and the light blue circles are locations that are underway. And this graphic gives you a time frame of our overall sequencing, and you may notice that we thought we'd be clever, and we labeled our project rollouts with book language. So our first project, which was the Operations Center, is labeled Preface, and each of the other rollouts are chapters. So or groupings are called chapters. So you may hear me slip into some of that language as we're going through. Equity was one of the key values that was established very early on. We approached it from several different perspectives in our program, and one of those perspectives is tracking our participation of historically disadvantaged firms. This graphic shows you our participation for professional services. The county only officially counts, quote unquote, Oregon certified COVID firms. However, it was really important to our program to look at the whole wider picture. So that yellowish orange slice represents firms that are certified elsewhere, and are primarily national design, library design firms. And right now, here's our actual COVID numbers for the library bond as a whole on the construction side. And this slide includes all of the projects, except a few remaining refresh projects that haven't gone, that haven't, that are still in construction or haven't quite started. Another guiding principle for us is sustainability, really reflecting Multnomah County's commitment of demonstrating fiscal responsibilities to taxpayers with durable spaces, materials, systems focused on efficiency and flexibility. New county facilities are designed to last 80 years and are designed to meet our regional sustainability goals as well as LEED Gold certification status. As a note, our GET dollars, our green energy technology dollars, we pulled them from Midland and a few of our other projects and utilized them at our operations center, which we're targeting energy net zero certification. And we were really strategic about managing that as a portfolio, thinking about how could we get the most bang for the buck, what's best for the environment, what's best for the library system, what roofs make sense. And so that is so you won't see some of those features on the Midland Library because we pulled those dollars and are using them elsewhere in the system. And I know that you all heard from our design partners recently on the Midland community engagement, and I don't want to delve too deeply into this again. However, it was so integral to our design process. I did want to highlight our ethos and share a link to our community engagement webpage here. And before we get into Midland specifically, I wanted to share some portfolio-wide challenges that we experienced, including those that impacted Midland. So the pandemic deeply cut into our planning efforts. We started meeting internally in February of 2020 with the intent to really take off running when the bond measure was approved. And although we did do some planning, both the library and the facilities divisions were really distracted by the pandemic, riots, wildfires, murder hornets, and the planning was a bit disjointed. And the second major challenge is really related to how the bonds were sold. It forced us to compress the overall schedule by about 2 years. This was very impactful, especially to our community engagement efforts. However, it did give us an extra $50 million premium of quote unquote free money, which was really life-saving in the face of the market volatility and supply chain challenges that really rocked the world in the pandemic and early post-pandemic world. And we had some real struggles early in design as the library was really in the midst of making significant changes to their program. And it took us a while to determine what that end use needed to be. And we are now having to go back and do some make rights to align and adjust with how those things have settled out. So I'm just going to pause because that's my overview of the portfolio before I get into Midland and wonder if there's any questions.
Yeah, so thank you, Kate. So interesting to hear about how you kind of rode the wave of craziness that was happening there for a while in the construction market. All right, well, feel free to jump off mute and ask a question if you'd like, or you can drop it in the chat. All right, well, I'll ask a question. Now, you mentioned that you consolidated your solar kind of in those 4 locations. Did you have solar feasibility studies completed? How did you determine which of those buildings were the best candidates?
That's a really good question, Ellen. So in some cases we did, in some cases we just knew. So we knew that the roofing system couldn't structurally support a PV array, or We knew that it was in a neighborhood location that was heavily shaded, or it wasn't a flat roof and wasn't the best use of those dollars. And we knew that we wanted to be able to manage everything from a maintenance and operations standpoint. Consolidating those was easier as well. So in some cases we did, but that wasn't necessarily our driving decision, or wasn't the only thing in our driving decision.
That makes sense. And did you look at all at solar ready for any of the other facilities, or did that just not make sense either in some places?
It didn't make sense, but we looked at our locations and looked at whether or not it made sense to, if we didn't have enough funds right now, if we could expand some of our solar on other locations. So for instance, at East County Library, we only had about 2/3. We built it out for a full amount, but there was only about 2/3 that we were really planning on adding at that time, at the time of opening. We've since come into a little bit more money and have been able to buy that back. And so we've been able to expand it very easily because we made those assumptions up front.
Nice. Thank you. Well, anyone else have a question before we jump into specifics? All right. Well, thank you. There's going to be more Q&A later. So if you realize like, oh, I did have a question, hang tight. We'll have more later. Okay. Thanks, Kate.
Absolutely. So Midland Library supports one of the most culturally diverse areas in the region. And to amplify the community's ideas, the library worked with COTE Design to host focus groups, online public meetings, one-on-one meetings with community members, public surveys. We received over 6,000 comments from more than 40 events, and community members cast over 1,500 votes for Midland's interior color, with the winning theme being a deep blue colors inspired by water. And here is just how we've tracked some of those different comments, and we're able to show how it impacted design. So just looking into some of our new features of the space, we have a large learning and a large play and learning space for children and families, which is really nice and has been very popular. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Is there someone behind you talking?
Oh, yes. I'm not quite sure how to, she's on another meeting as well.
Okay. Okay. I think we'll just all have to roll with it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you for pointing that out. Here we have our outdoor interactive children's garden and our outdoor plaza for community members to relax and connect, and an exterior conversation circle. This, along with the gathering circle, was designed with insights from our indigenous communities that symbolize connection to the world around us and foster conversation with others. We have an enclosed teen space, and this is in a room with space for technology, homework, creative expression. We have some video games in there. It has really taken off and been very, very popular. And here's that gathering circle that I referenced earlier. It's an interior gathering circle, and that was also part of that indigenous community conversation. In addition, the artist Kanani created an original 2-dimensional mixed media wall-mounted artwork, which frames that interior gathering circle, which is a communal seating area that encourages fosters connection. The artwork is located directly across from the main entry doors and is one of the first things visible as people arrive in the library. We also had quite a bit of technology that was updated throughout the library and the library system. We have new laptop or Chromebook checkouts. We have new and more public computers, and we have a new automated materials handling that ensures that materials get to patrons much faster. And modern self-checkout stations to provide a better patron experience. And the automated materials handling is I like to think of it as like a baggage at the airport, where it you check in a book, it sucks it in, it reads the barcode or RFID that comes in, and it shunts it to the correct bin so that it can either get shelved correctly in the right location or it can get shipped out really easily. Midland is also home to the first ever sensory room in the library system. The sensory room is a space dedicated to supporting patrons with diverse sensory needs. This room can be flexible in its use and providing a calm, quiet area to a space for more focused activity. Midland Sensory Space has a variety of lighting options as well as interactive furniture, including a fiber optic tunnel, globe beads that kind of light up. And it's one more way that the library is providing welcoming spaces for the diverse needs of patrons. So here is our community art gallery area, which is right outside some of our meeting rooms. And we have multiple community rooms and meeting room types available for patron use that they can connect much easier. So going from 3 meeting rooms before construction to 10 community rooms with approximately 4,400 square feet total after construction, the library is excited to expand these places for connection, whether through a community meeting, library event, or just needing a quiet room for one-on-one conversation. These spaces are for the public. And many of these community room spaces aren't for just when the library is open. With some after-hours meeting space available, community members can meet when it works for them. To increase connection, the technology team equipped all the community rooms in Midland with audio-visual materials. We have 3 small community rooms, 2 medium community rooms, 3 large, and 2 community rooms which can be used separately or combined into a larger space. Then at Midland, we also have a brand new canopy framing the redesigned entrance and the exterior public plaza. The underside of the canopy, spanning the width of the building, features artwork by local artists, Lillian Pham and Paola de la Cruz. Lillian is a second-generation Vietnamese artist and cultural organizer who creates through systematic consciousness framework and lens, specifically place-based justice and racial equity. Paola originally is from the Dominican Republic. She interweaves digital and analog media, patterns, stitching, and shape-based illustrations to evoke intimacy while challenging the themes of cultural identity, coming of age, and interpersonal growth. And together they conceive and actualize socially engaged projects through their art partnership, which blends one another's strengths, passions, and creativity. And through their community input, their artwork provides a very colorful and engaging welcome to everybody who visits Midland. Another artwork welcoming patrons to Midland Library is a series of sculptures of varying sizes installed along the plaza. These sculptures take place of the beloved clock tower, which had to be moved due to the library's expanding to the south, and the new beacon artworks created by the Ukrainian and Canadian artist team, oh my gosh, I get this wrong every single time. Hibiscozo, which will be prominently located on the south side of the new building, greeting patrons and staff upon their arrival to revitalize the beloved community space. With significant daytime and a nighttime presence, and due to the dispersed nature of their locations, the community has the opportunity to engage with the artworks on an intimate level as they meander through the plaza and spend time enjoying those exterior amenities of the library. In addition to the rack artwork, engaging line work on the exterior of the library welcomes visitors from diverse communities. This line work was directly inspired by communities themselves based on the pattern workshop led by Co-Locate Design. As part of the workshop, community members shared culturally important stories from their lives, created patterns based on these stories, and the design team used the patterns as direct inspiration for the library's exterior design, featuring symbols and icons that represent many community members who use Midland.
consistently and over time.
So we've engaged in a number of sustainability efforts at Midland. We are anticipating LEED Gold certification. We have seven charging stations for electric vehicles. Our EUI is targeted at 41.9, and our embodied carbon is 13 kilograms per square foot.
All these decisions have already been approved.
So I really did want to touch on a few challenges specific to Midland. One was our PGE switchgear, and I think everybody is hearing about electrical switchgear everywhere. But PGE made a very late change in our process, and that really impacted the overall project schedule because of that change. Coordinating rack artwork into a custom panel, so that canopy panel, and it was fabricated in Austria, and that created some real big challenges for us. There's a real challenge with completing the renovation of an existing building, including several unforeseen construction conditions that needed to be addressed: thin slabs, precast concrete panel sealant, in addition to the new addition. And the challenge of creating a welcoming space for diverse communities with an emphasis on a variety of spaces for those communities together. And so, again, these will be posted on AIA Oregon's website, but if you want to keep up to date on any of our projects, we have the bond website, or you can sign up for a newsletter. And with that, I will pause and I can take questions.
Okay, wonderful. I do want to add, we can actually hear most of our conversation.
Okay.
So if it's confidential, that isn't a great.
Okay.
So hopefully that's okay. So you may want to mute in between Q&A.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So wonderful. Well, let's see. I'd love to take some questions, and if anyone has anything they'd like to add. It could be about the library bond in general, could be about a different library than we talked about today, or it could be about Midland. If you have that burning question about your neighborhood library, feel free. I did also have a question. So Kate, how have you taken some of those amazing kind of cultural aspects that you incorporated at Midland? Are you doing a similar tactic at the other libraries, where you're kind of doing a similar, like you mentioned the sensory room, you mentioned some of the artwork, some of those community. Looks like you're moving. Okay, thank you. So, are some of those being incorporated in the other projects as well? Okay, all right. Thank you. Appreciate your flexibility.
Absolutely. Sorry, I didn't realize it was quite that distracting, so I apologize to everybody on that. So yes, we have 3 locations that we will be doing the sensory room at, and so really exploring those. East County, of course, will have one. Midland has one, and oh gosh, I should know this off the top of my head, but I can't remember. There's one other one that I think we have. I think it's going to be Belmont. We'll have a sensory room. So yeah, we are trying to really identify and create some baseline consistencies, and we'll have we've broken them up into essentially 3 different types. We have small neighborhood libraries that receive a certain level of amenities and are much smaller, more limited program, fewer overall amenities, and generally are about 10,000 square feet. Then we have more destination type libraries, which are closer between 20 and 30,000 square feet. They are bigger, they have more community room space, they have have more programming. And then we have the flagships, which are going to be East County and Central. Those will have really unique specialty spaces. They're going to be, they're 100,000 square feet, 90 to 100,000 square feet, and have a lot of different amenities as those come through.
Yeah, thank you.
Kind of hoping just to piggyback off of that conversation, which is just maybe if you could speak to the community engagement or the user group kind of workshops, and if it was sort of bigger picture like bond effort of like developing these programs that you're going to roll out into all libraries, or if it's just like I guess a framework for then engaging the communities for each library, or understanding like how to apply this specifically, but also equally.
Yeah, so I will say it was identified very early as something very important to us. So we hired a community engagement liaison or coordinator, and um, she helped, and then it was a little bit of learn as you go. And we wanted to have our design teams have the flexibility to come to us with what they have seen work in the community, and that was part of the RFPs that we had issued, is hearing what they have come to the table. And then since then, as we were developing it and learning and growing, we've said, okay, this really works well. So we really want to do public voting. And so then we said, okay, everybody still has to do some level of public voting. Or every project has to do some level of project voting. Um, and so really trying to respond to the neighborhood. And we also, on almost all of them, except for one, we did some level of paid advocate within the community system. And so it looks a little bit different at each of our, based off of our different project teams, look a little bit different. Again, depending on the needs and the experience and how to better engage in the communities. So the Bora Co-locate team came together with the community design advocates, where we sat down and we thought, okay, who's at the table, who's not at the table, whose table do we need to go sit at, to make sure that all of those voices are getting heard, including those who don't tend to use the library system, to find out why they don't use the library system and what would make them feel more welcome. Whereas, and Chandra, you could probably talk to this as well, but on our Lever and Nolan Tam team, they came and really had the youth. Oh, I know I should have had this. I'm sorry,
It's
Chandra.
called Yoda.
Yes, Yoda. I couldn't remember what it stood for. I knew it was Yoda. I was like, I don't. But they bring in youth and they talk them and introduce them to the entire architecture system and how it works, and give them lots of experience. And then they also provide input on the design as well. And that was really successful. And then a lot of neighborhood engagement. So really trying to, yes, establish that baseline, and allowing it to flex based off of the neighborhood needs. Does that help? Okay.
Yeah, thank you. So we had a question of, what has the public response been to the front room with the circular furniture? It's folks love it, and they want to know if people are gathering there.
Yes, it is in constant use. So they do a lot of story times there. Whenever I go, I see, sometimes we'll see groups who are there, but sometimes we just see people hanging out and chilling and reading their books, or messing around on their laptops or on their phones. Interestingly, I'm getting ready in the next month to have a staff retreat, and we're going to do it at Midland Library, and we're going to use that gathering circle as our primary area for our staff retreat. So we're really excited about that. But yeah, it's been overwhelmingly used.
Yeah, it's so welcoming. It's no
So great
surprise.
to hear.
Yeah.
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 So
I'm just going to go riff off of that for just a moment, if you're okay
yes,
with it. So
take
one
it.
of the other things is, we've been blown away and slightly surprised by the number of young people who are using the library at Midland, and they are taking over all of the community rooms. They're just in there and they're studying like nobody else can get in there. Like, it's just been it's taken the staff and us all by surprise, the number of usage of those different spaces by young people. So that's been really cool too.
Nice. And when you say young people, like what, like of all ages, or? like
Middle school,
teenagers or?
mostly high schoolers.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. That's an age you want to get to the library, you know. That's a nice space for them to have quiet place to study and
Yeah. And the teen
whatnot.
room is kind of more on that younger teen, is what we're seeing that usage. And so the older teens are going to those other spaces.
Nice.
But they're going, right? They're coming and hanging out at the library.
Yeah,
It's really
they want to
cool.
be there. Well, can you describe the design and decision-making process you went through with the team to determine what kinds of sustainability measures were worth considering and ultimately ended up in the project? And were there energy and carbon saving measures that were cut or changed during the process?
That's a really good question. Each of our projects had a charrette, an eco charrette that we went through that helped identify it. Also, there's a number of expectations that are um, built into the projects just from the county perspective, and I listed some of those earlier. And if you need some links, we can get you some links to those as well. So that really was kind of some of the baseline assumptions. Um, there's always, as you're balancing some different things, there's some ideas that come forward, um, and things that work or don't work from an operational standpoint. Um, in this case, somebody had recommended that we look at operable windows, and it wasn't necessarily cut, but it just didn't make it through the whole into the design fully, because once you consider all of those different pieces, um, it just was going to create too much work, from the operation side of things. So, I'm just trying to think if there were other things that were cut that were on from the sustainability side. I think that we've run into some things that weren't cut, but maybe we weren't expecting the outcome or the impact to be as strong as it was. So we have this existing glass block that's on the east side of the building that currently now goes into the staff break room. And it's just a heat suck. I mean, it just is hot in there all of the time because of the sun. And so, right, that's one of the things that we're looking at. Okay, is there something that we can go back and do to evaluate that? And so those were some of the different things that we looked at, where they weren't necessarily in the design before. We didn't necessarily cut them from a sustainability standpoint, but we're learning now as we're going forward.
Yeah, now that you're starting to see the folks in the building and how are the reactions to the different spaces, and yeah, you don't want the staff getting really hot when they're taking their breaks. That's
Yeah,
not a comfort issue is important.
yeah, and then there's all other challenges as we're trying to work through, like how do you balance an anti-graffiti film along with a bird-friendly glazing, those spots and dots. And so how do you make those work together, uh, and how do you make it so that when somebody breaks glass, because they do a lot at our libraries, how do you manage it so that it's um, relatively inexpensive to replace and make everything work together. And so there's been lots of conversations on film and different levels of film and and some of those things.
Yeah, thank you. So Serena has another question here of she's interested in the potential for public buildings like libraries to serve as safe and healthy spaces of refuge during severe weather events like wildfire and smoke days. Was this factored into your conversations during the design process?
Yes. So on several different levels. So um, we know already that our libraries have been used and are used for warming spaces and cooling spaces. I want to be careful because they're not officially shelters, so I want to be careful on calling that. But we also know um, um, like the wildfires, we saw a high increase on that as well. And so making sure that our systems are robust enough to accommodate those a little bit more extreme temperatures and potential and outside environmental conditions. So yes, we did consider that and we built those in. Taking that healthy resiliency further, we also really thought long and hard um, and unique to each site about how this could, if there was a larger event from that resilient standpoint, like a earthquake, right? That's the big one hit. How could we, what buildings would be accommodated? This one, because so much of it, it was, the first 24,000 is existing space and we added 6,000. So we weren't able to do a whole lot. We did some structural upgrade, but most of it, it's not to that higher level. But some of our other locations, we added some program or some elements that aren't required by the program, like our Holgate Library. We did created a port so we could add in a portable generator really easily, so that we don't have it now. We don't have to pay for the expensive at the monthly testing and some of that upkeep. But if we needed to use that space, we now have a quick way to make it more usable.
Yeah. Wonderful. Sounds like there really was a lot of thought put into that. Yeah. Serena, did you have any follow-up? Just cool, thanks. She appreciated your answer.
I don't want to be a conversation hog. No, thank you. Those are, yeah, good answers.
Yeah, I do remember in the charrettes that came up a little bit as well. So it definitely was something you were thinking about from the beginning of design. So that's great. All right, well, any other questions or thoughts? Something spark your interest, feel free to jump on. Um, it's been fun with the Energy Trust perspective to be working with these libraries. I do feel like libraries are such an important part of communities, not just for the books, but just for the bringing together and just that community kind of wraparound that happens, I think, at a library. So I'm so glad that Multnomah County has been able to focus on those. So you've mentioned the East County a couple times. When does that one open?
Probably not for, we're aiming to have construction complete in early January-ish of 2026, and then it takes us a while to fill out all the FF&E and get all the books on order and put those in through the system and put those on the shelves. So it'll probably be sometime next spring.
Okay, wonderful. And one thing you didn't mention that I just think is amazing is you guys phased in different libraries were part of your different phasing process. And instead of calling it phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, you called it chapter 1, chapter 2, and chapter 3. I just thought that was a perfect way to summarize that for libraries.
We like to think we're clever.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you. Do you have any kind of last words before Kriya jumps on?
Oh, I had a question.
Oh, you have a question. Okay.
Yeah. Kate, I was curious, you mentioned some of these are renovations and dealing with an existing building and upgrade. As you know, we're looking at some of these new buildings, new construction. Were these different teams? Were there different challenges? I'm curious between these two different ways of approaching, or was it the same team with the kind of knowledge you have based on past examples and kind of moving through these different chapters with one team? I'm curious about that.
So our first grouping, our preface was kind of out the gate really fast on its own, and because of the change in how we had to compress our schedule, we were able to use our library architect who we had on retainer, and which was Henneberry Eddy, and so we got them moving, and so it was a standalone. The next 4 projects we call our chapter 1 projects, and we group those into 2 different, and we went through 1 RFP process and awarded to 2 different project teams, and we did that. So Holgate and Midland had the same design team and same contracting team, or at least, and then same thing with our Albina and North Portland has the same. And then chapter 2 is our East County. We figured it was big enough it could stand alone. And then our chapter 3 projects, there's 3 of those, and we have 1 contractor for all of those, and then one of them is it was under the Henneberry Eddy, and the others 2 went to Bora through an RFP process.
So it sounds like there's some continuity, but you did have them in chapters, and it could be with different project teams.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Excellent. That's good to know.
Yeah, and same project managers on our side. So like, right, Midland Holgate had Bora, Co-locate, Swinnerton, and my same project manager, so that it was a lot of consistency there.
Great question. All
And I
right, well,
apologize. I'll just say I apologize for the background noise. If you guys have any questions that stem from that, or if you need me to touch on anything again at another time, you feel free to reach out.
thank you, Kate. And we appreciate that the slides will be up on AIA's website along with a recording of this meeting as well in a little bit. All right, well, I think we got anyone who had questions, and we can end just a little bit early. But Kriya, was there anything you wanted to say from Energy Trust to bring us home?
Other than, so pleased to be able to highlight some of these truly exceptional projects. And Kate, it's always a joy for us when Ellen says, we have a media release forum, can't we just talk about this? And we say, yeah, we really do. To that end, we have some more opportunities to highlight as we go along in the future. And it sounds like, Kate, as I'm understanding this, is an ongoing story. There's, no story, it completely ends, has many chapters. I love this book idea. And so we hope to kind of maybe check in and hear more as this goes along. I know a couple people wanted to know about how people are using the space, who's using the space, and will you be are you tracking that? Will there be a report somehow at the end so we can say, this is the intention, this was the goals for the design, and then I don't know if there's like a year later, you have some idea about ways we can come back around and figure out if it met, or it sounds like far exceeded expectations on what you were hoping community members will experience at their library.
Yes, actually, so a couple of different ways. Yes, that's really important to us. And so during the community engagement process, we issued surveys to the targeted community design people. So like our community design advocates in this case, and said, is this process working? Are you feeling heard throughout the design process? And now when the building's open, we're reissuing to those same people saying, does this really, do you still feel that way? Do you still feel engaged? Does this actually reflect what you've done or what we've said we would do? So we're doing that kind of more anecdotally. And we are also putting together, so our group also, we have a lot of different mechanisms that hold us accountable. And one of those is our bond oversight committee, who has specifically asked for a report at the end of the overall program that shows these were the goals that were set out and how have you met those. And so yes, at some point in the next couple of years, there will be a report that says these are what our baseline requirements were, and this is now all early projections of that are very positive. We are knocking most of our goals out of the park. So we're really proud of that work.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing a little bit about this. I think probably all of us in the Portland area have seen some work happening at a library, and it's nice to know a little more of the story behind that. Just continuing the library theme. So, so thank you so much, Kate, and thank you everyone for joining us today. Really appreciate your time, and we will see you again next time in May for our next DDS. Night,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thanks, everybody.